Don't just be a person who holds a degree and knows nothing. You'll become a CMA qualified. You know in what direction to move. I'm telling you, it is gonna create a problem for you. If you're an inter student of CMA or an industrial trainee, I want you to understand this one thing, is that don't limit yourself to the work that you're doing in your current job, right? Because if you're working in accounts, you know how accounting works. You know how to do the journal entries in the tele software, right? If you're working in costing, you know how costing works, right? You know how product costing works. You know how to minimize the cost and expense of the management of the company, right? And if you're working in MIS, you think Excel is enough for you, right? So I want you to understand this one thing, is that your current job role not necessarily be the role throughout your career, right? Because for example, I worked as an account executive in my inter, so I know how core accounting works. I know how to use the tele software. I know how to use the Excel, right? I know how to do the journal entries. I know how to prepare dashboards, but I know nothing beyond that, right? So I want to tell you students that don't limit yourself to your current job role, right? If you use your CMA inter time in a better way to learn different kind of skills, to explore different kind of skill, by the time you'll become a CMA qualified, you know in what direction to move. So instead of waiting for the finals, use your inter time to build your skill set. Here are 7 skills I would recommend to every CMA inter student. So first and the most obvious one is Excel, right? So Excel is the basic skill that every inter student of CMA should know. Right. And I'm not talking about basic Excel, right? I'm not talking about basic sum formulas, sum formulas, basic VLOOKUP formulas, or basic formatting. I am talking about advanced Excel, and that is pivot tables, Power Query, dashboards, right? And presenting the financial information in bar charts, histograms, and whatnot. You should know how to do it, and the other advanced Excel formulas too, right? Because when you've become a CMA qualified and you're applying jobs as a CMA fresher, the company will expect from you to present the financial data of the company in a more clearer way and in precise manner. That is how you will stand out the most, right? Because this is what the company expect from you. So having degree alone is not sufficient, right? So you have to know what kind of skill set suits you the most. And when I'm talking about Excel, try to learn Excel on a real financial data of a company, right? You can find company's information, financial information, that is publicly available on the internet itself. You can analyze its you can analyze the company's financial data, how the sales are working, how the revenue is rocketing, right? And how the financial ratios are working. I think financial ratio is the most important and interesting part that every CMA student should look after. So take a real financial data of a company and try to build dashboards and actual reports from that data. Second skill is Power BI. So finance is becoming increasingly data driven, right? Companies now just don't need persons who can prepare numbers. They need persons who prepare number and also know how to analyze these numbers in a proper manner, right? So you don't have to learn Power BI as an expert immediately. There are loads of video on the YouTube itself. You can find it on YouTube and search like tutorials of Power BI and all of that stuff. Just try to learn the interference of Power BI. Just try to be comfortable with the Power BI, right? Because you're going to be use this tool on a daily basis when you become a finance professional and when you'll be working in a company. For example, revenue, expenses, profit margins, monthly trends, working capital, all in one dashboard. You just have to know how it can be done with the help of Power BI. So you don't have to be an expert, just learn the basics of it, with the help of YouTube itself. I don't think I have to tell those videos like tutorials of Power BI. You can, there are plenty of videos on the YouTube. You can just do this stuff, do this research by yourself. I'm leaving this to you. So try to learn how to use it. As a CMA student, don't just restrict yourself to financial analysis in theory, right? You're already studying financial analysis and financial modeling in the syllabus itself, but try to apply these skills in the real world, right? You can download a real company that is real company's financial data that is publicly available on the internet itself. Then read the financial statements, read the cash flows, how the profitability of the companies work, read the financial ratios, right? All of that stuff. You already know these terms, there is a difference between knowing a number and understanding how those number work, right? How to find the trends and try to find the unusual number and the reasons behind it, compare the periods and what not. As a CMA, when you study your syllabus, you become a little creative too. So try to apply your critical thinking skills. Okay, don't just be a person who holds a degree and knows nothing, right? Also, you can move to SQL later. It's like a coding language for finance. You can also use it in accounts and finance. So you can hop to SQL later, and you don't have to be a data scientist necessarily. The goal is to become a financial professional who is comfortable with the numbers, who is comfortable with the analysis, and a financial professional who understand the business actually. So build your financial analysis skills and relate those skills to the real world. So the next skill is financial modeling. It means you should know how to build a basic financial model for a business, right? For example, revenue projections, expense projections, cash flow forecasts, and sales forecast, and sensitivity analysis, and whatnot, right? So, when you're working in these skills, when you're working yourself on these skills, you should know in a flash, right? Like, you should know in a flash, like, what happens to cash flow if the working capital increases, right? What happens to profit if revenue increases by 10%? So you should be able to answer these questions in a flash. This develops your financial thinking as a CMA student. So the next skill is ERP knowledge. And by ERP knowledge, I mean SAP especially. Understand the basic SAP, understand the basic SAP terms, understand the basic functions that correlates to SAP. For example, you should know the basics of GL, AP, AR, cost centers, profit centers, O2C, P2P processes. And if your company already uses SAP, don't just remember the transaction codes. Try to understand what is behind these transactions, right? How one transaction relates to multiple transactions. So you don't have to necessarily be a SAP consultant, an expert in SAP, but just try to understand the basics of SAP. You can already find such videos on YouTube itself. So I'll leave that hunting up to you. Search on YouTube. There are plenty of YouTube videos relating to SAP that are available. Basic SAP knowledge, you can find it on YouTube, right? So the next skill, and one of the most basic skills, are communication and presentation skills. Yes, you've heard that right. You've already heard this narrative before, that if you're a CA, CMA, or a CA, it is not necessary to learn English. And here I'm telling you, if you're good at English, half of your problem is solved. English is one of those things that builds your professional personality, right? So if you're fumbling a lot or if you're not confident enough to present what you're thinking, this is gonna create a problem for you. You may know everything about a company's numbers, you're a genius, but do you know how to explain those numbers to your manager? Whatever the kind of MIRs, dashboards, and all of the stuffs you have created, can you make your manager understand what you've made? No. Can you present a MIS in a more clearer and in a non-fumbling way? No. and in the most confident way? No. Most of the student get stuck here. So you should know, these things, these basic skills. You should work on your speaking skills, on your presentation skills, on your professional email writing skills. So don't just sit on that. Try to do on a daily basis. Try to converse in English with your friends, or with your family, or with your brother or sisters. Try to have a conversation in English, right? So this is how you can build your basic English, and this is how you can stop your fumbling. And the last skill is business and data analysis, right? Don't just become a person who knows number, right, or accounting entries. Try to understand the business you're working with, right? If you're working in FMCG, try to understand the margins, try to understand the forecast, try to understand the sales. Or if you're working in manufacturing, try to understand the product costing, try to understand the marginal costing and standard costing. All of this stuff we've already studied in our syllabus, right? So try to relate what you've studied in your syllabus with the real world. This is not something, the syllabus we are studying is not something that is not applicable to the real world companies, right? So when you study a concept, just keep in mind that these concepts are already being applied in the real world. Okay, so understand those topic in a very informative way, in a very give a deeper dive to those concepts, right? Don't just rot learn the syllabus, because it is only going to help you in the exam, but later if you don't understand the concept, I'm telling you, it is gonna create a problem for you. So use your interstage to become the professional you've always wanted to be, right? And most importantly, your job description does not define you, right? And your job description right now does not define your career later. So don't just limit yourself to the work you are currently doing now. Explore different skills. It is not necessary that these are the only 7 skills that you have to learn. There are other skills too. Try to explore those skills, whatever you're comfortable with it. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video with your fellow CMA friends. And milte hain in the next video. If you have any other video ideas, just drop your ideas in the comment section and I'll come up with one. Tab tak ke liye, keep learning, keep growing, and best of luck for your upcoming exams.